Texas Association of African American Chambers of Commerce, Jimmy, is, I'll describe it as an umbrella organization, and it represents the interests of the 23 Black Chambers of Commerce in the state of Texas.
23, okay.
And so they're from the Panhandle down to the Gulf Coast, to the Piney Woods in East Texas, across the state. And clearly, Black Chambers are dedicated to improving opportunities for Black-owned business. About 30 years ago now, those organizations that were in existence at that time determined that they needed a representative in Austin at the state's capital.
Okay.
And so they created TAAACC, the Texas Association of African Americans. I like to talk or use the historical reference that though TAAACC was formed in 1988, it actually traces its roots back to 1936 with the creation of the Texas State Negro Chamber of Commerce. And so there's always been
So rich history here.
rich history and always been a very vibrant, if not necessarily profitable, but it always been a very vibrant Black business community in the state of Texas. And so clearly, if in 1936 there was enough business activity for Black businesses across the state to need an organization to represent their interests, so Texas has a very, very
Now, let's make sure we get the historical reference. You're talking about in the 30s having this need,
yeah.
when the state is just pouring with racism and segregation, discrimination. And I can only imagine the difficulties for Black business owners during that period. Contrast that to today's time, and it seemed like people understood then there was a need. And do you get that same sense today that the Black business owner understands that they're still in an environment where that need still exists?
I do think that there is an understanding that there's a need. I think probably what is most, that I observe most often missing is the understanding of the link to whatever we term as our business success today, to the activities that went on 80 years ago.
Okay.
You know, and so folk don't, it's the stereotypical standing on the shoulders of others that have gone before us. And so I don't think that people understand that opportunities in the marketplace are part of a continuum.
Yeah.
That had not those brothers and sisters in 1936 been engaged in this awareness raising across the state that they were actually Black business people and they were doing stuff, that 80 years later, you might not be able to practice whatever craft it is that you like. Thomas in the IT business. Well, clearly, even 40 years ago, the numbers of brothers and sisters in that industry were minuscule.
Now, Charles, you know, I have to ask you. You have to give me the grade here for the state of Texas, how we're doing. I know last year we talked about the percentage of procurement contracts going to Black-owned businesses. It was a dismal number, and I hope that you have a better report, better information to come back and report 6 months later on how we're doing with the state of Texas. So hopefully the numbers have gotten better. Let's hear from because you're down there every day dealing with the legislators and lobbying on our behalf. So how are we doing?
We got some schizophrenia going on. On one hand, Texas has led the nation in the rate of formation, the number of Black folks declaring themselves in business for 2 decades.
Okay.
The meteoric rise in the raw number of people who offer themselves as business people, just from 2007 to 2012 went from 144,000 to over 250,000.
Wow, okay.
So we've seen this giant spike in the number of folk who are in business. Notwithstanding the fact that some of that can be attributed to pink slips.
Yes.
I got fired, so I'm a
Same
consultant.
here, I
Right?
understand, yes.
At the same time, the state of Texas has the fastest growing black population among the 50 states.
Really?
And so
Nearly
nearly 3.5 million black people in Texas, primarily concentrated, as you might imagine, in the urban centers, Houston and Dallas-Fort Worth area. But at the same time, there's a big swath in East Texas, from Beaumont up to, say, Texarkana. There's 1 million black people. And so coupled with this giant spike in business formation and this steady growth in the number of black folk in Texas, the economic activity associated with that growth is a plum for everybody else, it seems, but black people. You cited the numbers and the dismal numbers that continue at the state of Texas level. The last budget, the state of Texas spent nearly $21 billion for goods and services. Black-owned businesses earned 1.2% of that. That's about $300 million. Not a small sum.
Correct.
But against the fact that black folk contribute 15% to the state's treasury, we got this huge delta between what our contribution is to the state's welfare and to what we are able to exact as in our return on investment. And so we got something to do tomorrow, Jimmy. I mean, it's like the work's not going away.
That's correct.
We've been very fortunate, as you alluded to earlier. We just had our 4th in succession Black Business Day at the Capitol. We had about 150 business owners and chamber leaders from across the state. And this year, we also invited the Texas Publishers Association, which is the 28 black newspapers in the state.
Oh, wow, okay.
And also invited the Texas Association of Black City Council members. We believe that if you take out Sylvester Turner, the mayor of Houston, that the 38 black mayors in the state of Texas control budgets of over $1 billion and represent over 1 million Texans. We think that's an opportunity, a growth opportunity, because in smaller cities where they don't have a city manager, they run a mayor council form of government rather than a council manager, mayors can direct spending. And the council members that make up those councils also have a say in that. So when we expand our relationship with those folks responsible for distribution of public resources, I think we increase the opportunity for black-owned businesses. And so I say it was 38 black mayors, then that's 38 squad cars.
Sure.
You know, that's 38 fire stations and 38 sidewalk projects. And so
38 telephones.
yeah, there you go. And phone systems, right?
So I'm going to be on record that I know we didn't come this year. We did go last year.
Yes.
So some health issues kept me from going and participating this year. But not only will I be there next year, Black Men Speak will be there next year. We'll hopefully be on site doing some interviews. And I'm going to put my pitch in right now because I want to be a guest speaker. I know you guys had me down to speak before, so please invite me again. I hope to see that invitation in the mail soon.
And I want you to know that though your absence was noted, we absolutely refreshed folks' memory
Thank
of
you
your
so much.
contribution to not only TAAACC as an organization, your support for us on the telephonic services businesses, but also that you had extended that to not only all the chambers in the state,
Yes.
but to business owners as well. And so MOTC TEL was
Thank you so much.
recognized on our sponsored role and everything. So
Yeah, these guys do a great job, Tom. We're promoting our phone business, and I know that the effort is there because I talk to people from time to time, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, I've heard of you before," and I know we haven't done the advertising branding down in the Austin area, but they see our name on the program, they see Charles and Chris and those guys mention us from time to time. They always include on everything they're doing, so we appreciate everything that you guys have done for us, and hopefully y'all can help us grow the Black Men Speak channel also. And you guys are more than welcome to come on here anytime you want, because we want to start hearing about some of your activities and maybe in advance to give some advance notice. But what else you guys? I know you got an event coming up in the fall, right? Which I do every year.
If I could do, and this is, and I think you know me well enough. This is not a braggadocious deal. This is not, but because of our very, very active role, and because of Texas's, I'll say, seminal role in the business form of Black Chamber of Commerce. The first Black Chamber of Commerce that we can find was formed in Dallas
Yes, it was.
in 1926.
So the oldest.
And so,
The oldest.
the oldest.
Yeah,
And so, and the second oldest was Houston, 9 years later. Because Texas has, again, such a foundational role in business advocacy organizations, we have been serving on the board of the U.S. Black Chambers, which a 10-year-old organization that represents 126 Black Chambers in 23 states.
Okay.
And I was recently elected chair of the board of directors of that organization. And so,
Wow.
not only do we have
Congratulations.
a very central role in advocacy at the state level, but on the national level as well. And so that gives us an opportunity to shine on those glaring disparities in our state, but also to use the experiences that we've had in at least giving voice to the concerns of Black-owned business and adding that to the messages that go across the nation. And so we're really, really thrilled about
Wow.
that and what the prospects for that mean to us as an organization.
Now, you said 23 states. What are all 50 states? Are there some states that we don't have Black Chambers in?
Montana. New Hampshire.
Tommy works for a company that you guys provide IT services and phone services to our prison system, incarceration system.
Right.
But a big chunk of his territory is that Midwest, between the coast states. And I think I was, what were you, just Wyoming or Montana?
Wyoming.
Yeah, I was asking, were there any black folks up there? You probably have more cows than black people up there.
I would agree. You're right. I think I saw probably more in the airport than I saw after I got into the city, but yes, I would agree.
One day we'll do a session just on Black history. I'm an armchair historian, and I think that we can prove that Black folk in Wyoming, Montana, Idaho just disappeared because we know that Buffalo soldiers were detailed to those states when they couldn't figure out another place to put them.
Okay.
And they just kind of morphed into the general population after generations. And there was a brother here, Rick Lucero, who ran the Native American Center, who grew up listening to Coltrane because his granddaddy was Black. He's from Montana.
Okay.
You know, so we know that this was going on, and that's a real side note and another story that we can do on another statement.
I know for me personally, it's just too cold up there. I love it down here.
And winter.
That's correct. So about you, Tom? You have any questions for Charles? I know were you familiar with the TAAACC before?
I would not.
Okay.
This has been very interesting and very enlightening. I think I've heard of it, but I wasn't exactly sure as to what your overall responsibility is. So with the Black Chambers, for instance, in the state of Texas, in terms of their mission, where do they end and where do you guys actually begin in terms of the types of services that you offer to the Black business community in the state?
As you might imagine, the concerns, issues of importance to Black-owned businesses in Abilene might be a little different from those Black business owners in Houston.
Correct.
Just
I have family in West Texas.
and the environment in which they have to execute that mission is critically different between even Longview and Waco, so to speak. So again, much of the regulatory environment, of course, is controlled in Austin.
Correct.
And so our interface with the executive level of government, our state agency heads and legislators is designed to at least ameliorate the impact, the negative impacts on businesses that operate across the entire state. On those occasions that we can assist local chambers in advocating a particular point of view, then we'll go in to another city and say, well, this is our experience, And sometimes it's something as pure as our being able to say something that might not be the best thing for them to say, and both of them, and have to live there the next day. And so, somebody.
So I'm hearing kind of a broader perspective, you know, a large lobbying group on behalf of the chambers where, you know, they benefit from what you guys may have leverage to do that they may not.
Yeah. And
with some flexibility.
An advocacy organization. A lobbying clearly is a really, really well-defined term.
Fair enough.
You got to be careful about using that word.
Okay.
It sounds like you guys have to be flexible in how you do your craft, because you said every area is a little different. They have different needs and setups and requirements and pressures on them. So you got to navigate those waters carefully, depending on what part of the state that you're in, what city, and so on. So
it's if you could just imagine, Corpus Christi has a black chamber. And Corpus Christi probably has a 4% black population. The number of black-owned businesses, number one, is very, very small.
okay,
But their needs are no less great than those that we experience here in Dallas-Fort Worth, with no substantive population to raise the awareness. Then they got to have some help that comes from someplace else. So,
Okay.
so even in helping to assist them in the development of strategic alliances with other groups that might support the growth and development of black-owned businesses. In South Texas, clearly, with high levels of Hispanic population, those are very, very critical relationships that have to be around. And then the overarching deal, of course, is in a very, very hostile environment across the entire state that has not been hospitable to black folk.
sure.
We get pretty good at doing the fancy dance across the state. And so again, I think that the experiences that we've gained here operating in North Texas and of course in Houston has been critical to being able to assist a Longview, a Lufkin, an Abilene, an Odessa.
I see, Odessa, Texas. And so my next question, Charles, is kind of going to lead into our, and I hope you can stick around for our next show, because we're going to, Tom and I are going to review the Black Tax, the book and the video, the YouTube video that was put out. And this is not to embarrass any company out here on the landscape, but there was it was mentioned that how like we wouldn't even know where to go find a black business, even if we wanted to do business with them. And I always tell people that rather than if the heads of these agencies and procurement managers are having trouble finding black business to do business with, my contention is go to the people who know where the black businesses are and give them the procurement responsibility. Let them be involved in the process. Contract. Republicans like contracting things out. I'm one of those, smaller government. So here's an opportunity for the state of Texas, Republican-held state, to outsource some of this functionality. If you have trouble doing this, you can't find black business to do business with, Charles here can help you. The TAAACC can help in that effort. Can you speak to something? I know there was some communication you guys were doing along that lines with a few agencies that made commitments and actually met those commitments, but we need more of that on a larger scale to get past that 1.2%.
One of the reasons, I'll try to tighten the circle, but I got to go a long way around.
Go ahead.
On answering that. One of the continuing depressive effects on growth in black-owned businesses is the interpretation of statutes. And we talk about it in terms of the rulemaking process. And so we can have a perfectly formed, perfectly articulated piece of legislation that says the state of Texas commits to everything it possibly can do to improve opportunities for black-owned businesses. Passes, goes to the governor's desk, he signs it, it's law. And then it goes to rulemaking. And the lawyers interpret what that statute means. It means that we're gonna do everything we possibly can, except if so-and-so. But for
That's all the best
so-and-so.
effort rule.
And so good faith effort.
Good faith effort, yes, there it is.
So,
Now, how does that come into play? I mean, we say good faith after this. This is a situation where he's like, well, you know, I'm really looking for a black-owned business, but I don't seem to know anyone. Is that what we're talking about?
I looked at the 50 nickel, I didn't see any, so.
good faith effort is a convenient hiding place for folk who,
So if they wake up one morning and they say, look, I don't see any black businesses, I made my good faith effort.
it's that wrong most of the time.
Wow.
Now, about 3 sessions ago, something interesting happened. And in concert with a number of black-owned legislators and one not black legislator, a piece of legislation that was passed that allows just what you said. Senate Bill 328 allowed agencies who have difficulty in increasing opportunity to hire organizations like TAAACC.
Great.
To assist them in their outreach and other activities associated with business development. It's on the books. Greg Abbott signed it.
Okay.
When he was Attorney General. Rick Perry signed it into law.
Don't tell me no bug, please don't tell me there's a bug with this story.
But no agency has said that's a useful tool.
Really? Not one?
Not one. And so, interestingly, the closest agency to grasping the intent of legislation and engaging us is Texas Parks and Wildlife Department.
Okay.
An agency that 5 years ago had no substantive black business utilization, has increased the use of black-owned businesses nearly 500%.
Okay.
That's significant. But who knows what the Texas Parks and Wildlife buys? You know, they buy everything from paddles for canoes to dirt and gravel for roads through parks.
So it sounds like we really have a story here, something that we can get behind, and it's not just us complaining and asking for something that we're not, I hate to use the word entitled, but not entitled to, but this is now state law, and this can be done as far as to assist with the outreach. We should be coming together to put pressure on some of these organizations to use that. That we just can't accept your dismal record anymore, your good faith effort anymore. We have the state of Texas giving you the tool to deal with your dismal performance, so deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of those agencies, you'd be lining up at your door saying, hey, you know, we're ready to, you know, to the contract out to you guys to help us in this area.
Yeah. As we talked earlier, I do have a background in the news business, and I like words, and words have meaning, and your hesitance to characterize our challenge as an entitlement is because someone else has attached a pejorative connotation to entitlement. We are absolutely entitled to a return on our taxpayer investment.
That's true.
It is un-American to be denied a return on your taxpayer investment in the capitalist economy. We put in, there should be an expectation that you'll get a return on
a fair
investment.
return.
And so I don't retreat from using the language to articulate clearly what it is our position, and our position is that we are paid in full. We have an expectation of return on our taxpayer investment, and at this point, since 154 years since General Granger walked off that boat in Galveston and said, "Y'all's free," we have yet to exact a return commensurate with our contribution to the public.
That is true.
So it's an entitlement, and the facts are that without a corresponding investment in the state's Treasury, white business owners have achieved nearly a 100%, a one-to-one return on their taxpayer
Maybe
investment.
more than
So,
that.
and more than that, because they get your part,
Yeah.
they get the family that's on the part, and so very clearly, they are
Yeah.
performing over the index of what expectations would be for those who make investments in expectation of return. So I feel entitled.
Well, let me see, so now this gives me something else to get worked up about. When I say we, I mean we in the black community. Last year before this, getting worked up over statues and flags and names, but to me, the very thing we should get worked up about is the fact that 1.2% is what we should be worked up about. Because if we can increase that to 2% to 5%, I doubt that we get to the 15%, like you said, that we invest in. But let's say we even got to half of that number, 7.5%. The number of jobs that can be created in the black community, because a lot of the black businesses are existing in the black community. And then on top of that, rather than having to feel that we're not contributing a part of this, a thriving business in your neighborhood helps lift everybody. It increases the tax revenue there, allows the city to do more. With thriving businesses in your community, there's more pressure on the city and the county to keep the roads taken care of and improve the infrastructure. But without that tax base, yeah, they're putting their revenue where they think the money is going to be coming from. So you may lose out. So when it comes to our overall health, a job and being able to take care of yourself seems to be a better situation than complaining about statues. Not that the statues are not important, but if we can protest and make all kind of noise about statues, and then we got 1.2% of the state budget being directed at black-owned businesses, we contribute 15% to the budget. Yeah, that kind of disparity shouldn't sit well with any of us.
I think, Jimmy, and so kudos to you in that very clearly a forum like this where the definition of the concerns are ours. So much of the concern over statues was fomented from outside of our community. And so to the extent that we're able to control the conversation, that is to state very clearly what our positions are, vis-a-vis particularly black-owned businesses or other associations, in a forum like this where there's no confusion about what's being said.
That's correct.
And to so much of what we have to contend with, that is the royal we black folk, is this bombardment of propagandized inputs, that have nothing to do with how many black-owned businesses are surviving and being able to hire. And so our attentions are always diverted from issues that are germane just to our very, very, very unique needs and challenges in black Texas. And so when we are constantly admonished that education is the key.
That's a big key.
While it is, we will, that is again us, we will applaud Michael Dell, who's a dropout. And point fingers at a brother who dropped out.
Sure.
So make up your mind. I mean, either education is really important or economic success is important. Which is it?
Sure.
May depend on who it is.
Yeah.
Well, no question about that. No question about that, but don't vilify him first, or don't make the judgment first, because there may be genius residing
That's very
in
true.
that brother, and he just has not had the experience that will allow him to channel into his full genius. And so at the same time, we know when we are admonished that education is key, that for those of us who grew up in Texas, we grew up with substandard textbooks and substandard educational facilities.
Yes.
And we find ourselves here having obviously an intelligent conversation about educational shortcomings. And so we know that despite what we find to be the realities in delivery of education, quote unquote education, in the state of Texas, where the most recent textbook calls slavery just a happenstance.
Happenstance.
You know, kind of, they were just workers.
They happened to wake up and
Yeah,
say,
they were workers, you know, and they were immigrant workers, and so
I've heard about this recently in terms of how we deal with the transatlantic slave trade and how they are characterizing this in more recent textbooks. And for lack of a better term, they are, I'll call it whitewashing the true impact of what happened.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's in fact, I was testifying at the long-named Select Committee on Economic Competitiveness. And after I did my little spiel, the chair of the committee asked, "Oh, we're really having trouble with getting black parents engaged in education. What do you think are the conservatives should be doing?" I said, "Well, our experience in Dallas is its governance. See, because if I'm a black parent and I don't believe that the school board is really serious about educating my child, I don't have much interest in what they do." It's the wrong response.
It is true.
You know, it's the wrong response, but it's a human response to say, "Oh, they don't care nothing about my child. I'm not going down there." But they're taking your money and delivering you a substandard project.
They are, especially in the black community.
But in Dallas, where we've never had a majority black school board, even when most other students in the district were black, now they're Hispanic, and we've never had a majority Hispanic board. So whose concerns are being met at the school board that is not really concerned about the children who make up the student population?
Well, the corporate interests are being, you look back when President Obama was in office, I believe he gave the city of Baltimore almost $1 billion grant for education. Or just $1 billion grant, period. But this is a city where the black students can't take books home because there are not enough books. They're falling apart. So the city did not take the money to buy any books. They didn't improve the schools. They built one community center, that's all I ever hear talk about. The rest of the money went to corporate interests, it's not to embarrass AT&T, but AT&T provides all of the phone service there in Baltimore for all the schools. So, they got money to improve infrastructure. Okay, but you're in the education business, not the communication business. Your first job and priority should be to teach the kids. I would think buying books would be more important than improving my phone system. But this is how our money get carved up and spent. And you're right. When it's not your kid being educated, then you can say, "Oh, well, no, we forget about those books. Let's go out and buy new computers let's go buy the stuff that we want and need, rather than the stuff that the teachers need to educate kids." Whatever they're doing down there that's working, let them continue to do whatever they're doing. And so very little of that money actually went to the black people who need the most. And I thought the whole purpose was that we were going to help the least among us.
Because that was back to your term, Bobby. You gotta dig through and find out the genesis of that grant to Baltimore. Somebody advocated for it. It may not have been a city official. It may have been AT&T. Here's a way for us to snippet the public into supporting our efforts to get another.
To get the support.
It happens all the time. Happens all the time. Again, we've experienced that at the state legislature. Most recently, 2 sessions ago, there was a bill up to assist the alleviation of food deserts.
Okay.
Everybody supports it. Wow, we need grocery stores in those communities that are underserved.
Yes.
Who brought the bill? American Heart Association.
What they got to do with food?
Oh, that's a good question. A question we asked. Who put the bill up? American Heart Association. Oh, that's not important. Well, I think it is.
When you ask who put the bill up, what do you mean by put the
Sponsor of the bill?
Yeah, who is pushing to get the state of Texas to dedicate money so that they can put a grocery store.
So the American Heart Association is advocating to put money to eliminate food deserts.
On the surface.
Okay.
On the surface. But it actually was a grocery chain. So,
One of the big ones?
never found out. Never found out.
Never found out, okay.
Never found out. But, it's really, again, peel back the onion kind of deal. So our deal was, well, if in fact we put this bill becomes law, but there is no, there are no predicates that enforce the utilization of black contractors in the construction of these stores, the hiring of black people when they're built in those communities, for all the opportunities associated
From
with
black distributors, from black farmers, yes. all
This
of
is
that.
stuff that we asked that be articulated in whatever the bill was finally presented.
But it's so to help us though.
Then, as the coup de grace, as far as I was concerned, was that if in fact the state was able to levy this fund, the fund would be deposited at the Texas Department of Agriculture.
Okay.
Well, in the biennium preceding that session, the state Texas Department of Agriculture had somehow managed in 2 years to spend $150 with black-owned businesses.
150.
Wait, not 150 million. You said $150?
150.00.
Correct. Well, I'm like, man, no, it's not.
$150
Yeah,
for a state agency, this is it?
yeah. So I said, well, we can support the alleviation of food deserts, but this is not the vehicles that we think best serve the interests of those
Obviously,
communities.
they have no track record.
Yeah. So-
And what is the likelihood that with an influx of money coming through their agency for this purpose, that all of a sudden they're gonna find a way to do what they haven't been doing before?
Exactly. And so while I hear the very neatly packaged Baltimore story, I would dig a little deeper and say, well,
You're right
to
about
get
that.
$1 billion through Congress, a monumental effort. Somebody was figuring on making a whole bunch of money.
Yes.
And it wasn't us.
No, clearly wasn't.
It wasn't us. And so I would dig a little deeper to see who in fact it was who had the muscle, the political wherewithal, and financial wherewithal to get that big a sum of money effected into law to the point of distribution. Because you can clearly, as I said earlier, you can get a law on the books. You can't always make it do what.
No. Would you say what the group that does the interpretation, what's the laws?
It's the state's lawyers, and we call it the rulemaking.
The rule, okay.
Rulemaking.
Yeah, when they get the law and interpret what it says and make the rules behind it, they can almost rewrite the law.
Exactly. And that's the dilemma we face, again, the structural approach to alleviating discrimination in business opportunity. There's a Grossman decision back in '87 in Richmond, Virginia, and back shortly, about 3 years later, in Denver, Outeron versus Pena, where essentially this entire cottage industry of certification was given birth. So it says that you said we discriminated against you, you proved it. So you put the burden on the victim.
Yes.
So now you want to be certified. You bring this your birth certificate, your mama's maiden name, how much money you made last year, it tells us on penalty of federal law if you're really black.
I have a funny story with that. Of course, in the 90s, I had a consulting business, and we had a ton of those North Texas region. We were all these certifications. So now we're in the communication business. So we need to go get certified. I was like, it's not a bad idea. So we went through the process, started the application process. And believe it or not, I have a difficult time proving I'm a black person. I was born at St. Paul Hospital. They've closed it.
Right.
And so then I go to the county, the city, to get a copy of my birth certificate. They only have the short form. The short form doesn't tell you what race you are. They just tell you name, birthday, who your mom and daddy was. So I submit that and say, well, no, that doesn't prove that you're black. I go to my military records. You know, I pull my DD form 214. I'm looking through it. It doesn't say that I'm black. So I said, well, here's my driver's license. You can look at me here. And like, we need something from the government that says you're black. Well, I go down to the county and I say, hey, here's the problem I have. And they say, well, if you were born before, I think 1970 or something, they stopped doing the loan forms with the county records. So now I'm in a position now, black man in America, and I can't even prove that I'm black. 2 kids turned to 5.
It's crazy. And then my counter often is, they repealed past laws in South Africa. In 94, why are we still have some papers?
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, Charles. If anyone's interested in learning more about the TAAACC and reaching you guys, can you give us the URL to your website, your phone number to be reached at?
We're at www.TAAACC, Texas Association of African American Commerce.org, 512-535-5610. We're in downtown Austin, about 2 blocks from the Capitol. You did mention that our state conference is coming up in September, the last week in September 27th and 28th in San Antonio this year. And this is our 30th anniversary celebration.
We'll be there. Yes, we'll be there. Okay, well, thanks, Charles, for coming out. I hope you can stick around for one more segment. We're going to talk about the black tax next, and there are some interesting things that the brother brought up in the book and in the video. So I'm hoping your input can help contribute to the conversation. You got time for one more segment?
You know, I do my best.
Okay, so we're going to wrap it up there, and I want to give a big thanks to Fitness 360 for allowing us to use the facility. Carol Wilson and her business partner Marquis for helping us out. For MATC Telecom providing the equipment. For Forest Films for doing the editing of the video. And of course for Charles O'Neill for coming out and being our guest today on Black Men Speak. Thank you and have a good day. I hope to see you. And please subscribe to our channel. And I hope you stick around and catch our show next week. Thank you.